Hey guys, back with another video, a review on Sunken Sanctuary for the PS4. This is an indie game developed by two people, a husband and wife team, and their previous games I've not actually played. Their most famous one was called The Dishwasher, which was kind of like a side-scrolling action game with like Devil May Cry style combat. I never actually got to play that one. They also did a game called Charlie Murder that I don't really know what that game's really about, and then they did a game called I made a game with zombies on it, zombies in it, which I've heard of that game before, but I've never actually played it. So I had seen trailers of this game before, and obviously I knew that this game was heavily inspired by the Souls series, and that it was kind of like a Metroidvania. And obviously that's enough to sell me on the game, because obviously I'm a huge Souls fan. So yeah, the game recently came out on PS4. It's going to be coming out on Vita and PC later. And this game surprised the hell out of me, I gotta be honest. Because I had played Lords of the Fallen before this, and that was really like the first game to really be inspired by Souls and really borrow a lot of that game's mechanics. And in my opinion, that game just failed spectacularly. I feel like the developers of that game did not understand what made Dark Souls so good. I thought that game was extremely disappointing and just really lacking in a lot of areas. So I was a little bit worried with Sunken Sanctuary that it would repeat the same mistakes that Lords of the Fallen did. And I'm glad that I was wrong. The developers of this game completely understand why Dark Souls is such a great game, and why that series is so good, and what is so appealing about that series. We'll get into that. And this game, for the price, this is a $17 game. And it obviously doesn't have the scale or scope of the Souls games, but it's still pretty impressive. The scope and depth that this game has, really. For $17, it's an absolute steal. And if you are a fan of Metroidvania games or the Souls series, you need to play this. Highly recommended. So let's talk about the game. We'll start with story. Very similar with the Souls games, the story in this game is very minimalist, where you kind of start on this ship and you're kind of transporting a princess to like this other kingdom, and your ship kind of gets attacked. You create your character like in the Souls games, and you choose your class and things like that. But these enemies kind of attack the ship, and then you get kind of shipwrecked on this mysterious island, and you kind of awaken on this island, and then you kind of set out to kind of find the princess that's gone missing. And the story, there's not a bunch of cutscenes, there's not a bunch of dialogue. You're going to find a few characters across this island that will kind of give you some more dialogue and give you some more lore. You'll find items and weapons in the environment that give you kind of like background info as far as like the island goes and the princess and things like that. So it's got that same it's got the same hook that Dark Souls does in that way, but I can't say I was totally invested with the story here. The endings are also very Souls-like. When I did get to the endings, I thought some of the lore was a little interesting, but I'll be honest, it didn't really grab me as much as say Dark Souls did with its lore. But there are some interesting characters that you'll meet. Their arcs are very similar to a Souls game, where they're each on their own kind of quest when you first find them, and you kind of get to see like where they start off and then where they end off with their journeys, which I thought that was pretty interesting. But yeah, I do like how it's not like Lords of the Fallen. Lords of the Fallen, this is one of the things I hated about that game. They had a bunch of cutscenes, they had this really terrible story, these really terrible characters, really awful writing, and it just forced this stuff down your throat constantly. While this game, they understand that one of the appeals for the Souls series, a lot of people is the lore that you get slowly and steadily through like characters that you'll meet throughout the journey. But yeah, the story is not really one of the highlights for this game. It's really the gameplay where I really fucking love this game. So we'll talk about the gameplay. A lot of people have called this game 2D Souls, and it kind of is. It's a 2D side scroller, but it's actually more of a Metroidvania than you would expect. It's able to actually fuse Metroidvania and Souls elements together and create this really interesting game, and it has a few ideas of its own that are pretty unique. It can feel a little blatant at times. It copies some of the things from Souls a little too directly. I think some people are going to be kind of find that off-putting, but for me, I appreciated it because obviously I love the Souls games. So right off the bat, when you create your character, it's already like the Souls influences are already apparent. Where you start you choose your starting class. That depends on what weapons they're going to have in the beginning. You choose a starting gift, which is a certain item, and the game doesn't really explain to you how these items are used or what they do. When the game starts off, you'll on the island, you'll see these bottles that other players will leave on the ground. It's kind of like the messaging system, and in the beginning you'll get like these quick little tutorial tips, but other than that the game doesn't explain anything to you. You really have to learn the game's mechanics for yourself. Now, it's probably going to be a bit harder for people that have not played a Souls game, because like immediately there was a lot of this game's systems. I knew what to do basically because I'd played Souls games before. I knew how stats worked. I knew how equipment load worked. So I will say it might be a little confusing for people that haven't played a Souls game. And I would recommend, if you're feeling stuck and you're feeling really confused with how certain things work, it's advisable to look up like a FAQ. There's a website, fextralife.com, I think it was, that has like this really excellent FAQ that really will explain things better to you than the game. And I think this could be a criticism. I know some people aren't crazy about this way of giving you tutorials, but I didn't mind it because when I discovered things in this game for myself, for instance, the Creed and Sanctuary system, which we'll get to, it was a really great moment for me. It was like this amazing aha moment. And once I figured out how everything worked in this game and how all these systems kind of work together, it was really satisfying and rewarding. So there's something to be said about a game like this that doesn't give you all these constant tutorials. But yeah, you choose your character in the beginning. You can go with like a magic-based character, a dexterity-based character, strength-based character, a hunter character that uses bows and pistols and whips and things like that. There's a chef character, which I thought was pretty interesting. So there's a lot of depth with which character build you want to go with. For my first playthrough, I actually went with a magic character. Not something I usually do with Souls type games, but I thought it might be fun to do with this game. And so the game plays out like a side-scrolling platformer, basically, where you'll find enemies. You'll have light attacks and heavy attacks with your melee weapons, and you can kind of combo them together. You can actually juggle some enemies. So if you press the triangle button, you can kind of like use your sword to kind of slash enemies up in the air, and then you can actually hover in the air a little bit and do like air attacks with like your light attacks, which is on your square button. And that kind of adds like a Devil May Cry type element to the combat. And the combat itself, as far as like melee combat goes, is really satisfying. It feels good when you slash your enemies. Like blood just like gushes from your enemies. There's a lot of different gore effects. Like you can lop off the enemies' heads and things like that, and it feels good. Like it immediately feels satisfying. And you have stamina, like with Dark Souls. You have a stamina bar that you got to watch out for. And there's a stat that you kind of level up that's tied with that. So you can't just mindlessly attack your enemies. You got to really conserve your stamina. Of course, you've got your classic health bar, and you're kind of moving left to right. But there's also a lot of backtracking that you'll have to do through these environments. You'll have like these kind of fog doors of sorts that you can't really see what's behind them, but as soon as you go through them, then you'll kind of go into the next area. And kind of a weird quirk with this game is the fact that enemies can like come like attack you from behind these doors, but you can't actually see them until they come into your area. So that's a little tough to get used to, but you do eventually get used to it. There's obviously platforming in this game, which is something that's it's somewhat in the Souls games with those kind of jump rolls you can do, but there's not much of a focus on it. But this game being kind of a metroidvania game, you actually have platforming. And I guess we'll talk about the metroidvania elements of this game right now, where basically, you'll get traversal abilities in this game when you defeat certain bosses, and these abilities are a part of this brand system where you'll find characters that will kind of brand your character, and these are your traversal abilities. The first one you get is an ability that lets you interact with these obelisks that are throughout the environment, where you can actually go upside down and kind of you're kind of walking upside down on walls. And this is really cool, where you can kind of do all these cool traversal platforming challenges with being on the wall. And there'll be like these orbs that will kind of drop you down from the wall. And with that, you can get other traversal mechanics like a wall jump. You'll be able to jump between walls. And then you'll get like an air dash, where if you press R2 in the air, you'll dash through the air. You can also do a roll in this game too, like with the Souls games. You've got a roll that uses up stamina, and you can roll past enemies to dodge attacks. You can also, like with Dark Souls, you've got shields that you can use. You can hold up your shield to block enemy attacks. The stats work very similarly to the Souls games, where each shield will have like a fire defense, arcane defense, stagger defense, strike defense, slash defense. So the shields work very similarly to the Souls games as well, but the air dash is really fun. And when you combine the air dash, the wall jumps, and the ability to climb upside down like on walls, traversal in this game is really fun, and it's really satisfying. And there's a lot of platforming to this game that the Souls games don't really have. So in that way, the game's pretty exciting as far as like a metroidvania goes, where you'll see like this part in the environment early on, where, oh, how do I access that part of the environment where that treasure chest is? I can't seem to get to it. But later you'll get the wall jump ability, and then you can revisit this first area, use your wall jump ability, and get that chest that you couldn't get before. So it's got that satisfying element of returning to previous areas with your new powerful abilities. And obviously, like, you'll be able to destroy all these easy enemies that were giving you a challenge early on, but now you'll be able to just blaze through them, and you can access areas that you weren't able to get to before, and you'll get new items. So the sense of exploration here in this game is outstanding. This is one of the things that this game gets. It understands that was one of the big draws with the Souls games, and this game completely gets it. There'll be all these interesting locations you'll find, and you'll find a new location, and the text will come up right in the directly in the center of the screen and tell you what this new area is. And these areas all are interconnected with each other, where you'll unlock shortcuts. You'll find a switch that will unlock a gate, and that will lead to a previous area, and it all makes sense. Now, the one thing that's a bit weird with this game is the fact that obviously it's a 2D game. It's different from the Souls games in that way, and I found that you tend to get lost a little more easily in this game, and I think that's just because of the 2D perspective. And a lot of Metroidvania games have a map. Usually, like, with Super Metroid or Castlevania Symphony of Night, where you have your map in the top right, and you can press start at any time, so you can kind of understand how you're going to get to certain areas. Sultan Sanctuary does not have a map, and I've heard a few complaints about this, and I'm kind of conflicted on it, because I actually don't feel like this game needs a map, because yes, there were times where I was confused and lost, but when I finally was able to get the map in my head and kind of understand how all these areas connected with each other, it was really satisfying. And the moments of confusion I actually really liked. I'd come across an area, and there'll be like multiple ways to go, and they just keep branching off, and you'll find new areas that branch off into other new areas, and it's confusing, but at the same time, it's really exciting for me. It's just like, it gave me that feeling of like, holy shit, where am I? Where does this lead? Where am I going right now? And it's something that I feel like the Souls series, it's always had. It's always given me that feeling, but it wasn't since the original Dark Souls that I really felt like that, where I felt like lost and confused, and just totally immersed in this world, in these environments. And because the Souls games are so similar from one to another, even though they still have that great level design and interconnected environments, this game with its new twists and new kind of 2D perspective and metroidvania elements, it made it more satisfying for me. That sense of discovery and exploration was at its greatest, and I hadn't felt like that playing a game since the playing Dark Souls for the first time, and it really kind of blew me away. I really appreciated it. So no, I actually don't think this game needs a map. I'm of the opinion that it doesn't. I think it's more satisfying not having one, despite some frustrations with the game at times and really feeling quite lost. Now, yes, backtracking can be annoying at times, but the game has some smart ways to avoid that kind of stuff. So we'll talk about the Sanctuary and Creed system. Although first I want to say magic works very similar to... I guess I should talk about how magic works. I've kind of gone over how melee combat works. Magic, you can kind of equip different types of magic. You've got magic that you can use... that you can kind of equip if you've got a wand on. If you have a wand, you can actually use a sword and magic at the same time. Or you can equip a staff, so you can equip 2 different spells at the same time. If you're going with, like my character, I went with kind of like a melee magic class. I was able to find a weapon that actually scaled with magic, which was very powerful. And I basically, my character, I had a staff in my one loadout. This game has loadouts. So my one loadout was a staff and then 2 different spells. One spell I really liked to use was this flame barrage spell, where you just like spam these fireballs. And then I also had like this lightning blast attack. But I could switch to a loadout where I could use my sword that scaled with magic, and then I had a shield equipped at the same time too. So I kind of got a taste of both the magic and melee systems in this game. And magic is kind of OP in this game, actually. It's a little broken. They are patching the one spell, the Dragonfire spell, which I got late in the game, which just demolished bosses. Like, it destroyed them in seconds. To the point where I actually stopped using it after a few bosses, after I saw how broken it was. So they are actually patching that. Apparently, they're making that spell less useful, which is a good thing. I think they do need to tone down the magic overall. I think it demolishes bosses too easily. Other than the final boss is very resistant to magic. So there's some balancing issues as far as the magic goes. And I do think your character is a little too fragile in this game overall, because I went with light armor for my first playthrough, but my New Game Plus playthrough, I decided to go focus on heavy armor, so I was able to equip level 5 heavy armor, and I was still getting wrecked by enemies and bosses. Like, I was dead in no time. And maybe that's because of the New Game Plus. I have to make a new character myself to see if heavy armor really makes you tanky, but I feel like you're perhaps a little too fragile in this game overall. It doesn't take much for you to die. And basically, I was talking about magic, but you have your wands and staffs, and you can level up your kind of skills to kind of increase your magic stat, to increase how powerful your magic is. You'll find magic throughout the game, new magic abilities. So you have these equipable magic abilities, and then you have item magic abilities. These are kind of in your item slots, and you can kind of cycle through your items that you can use. You can use like healing items and all the like thrown items, like thrown daggers and smoke bombs and things like that. And you can add magic in these item slots, and you can use like the R1 button to just use a magic. For instance, like the lightning storm, where you'll just like send like this, like all these like electric bolts from to the left and right of you to damage enemies all around you. So it's really fun experimenting with all like these magic abilities, whether they be item magic abilities or equipable magic abilities. And there's a ton of them. There's so many of them, and you can level up your magic to like up to class 4. So some magic is a class 1. So if you don't have the class 4 magic ability, you're not going to be able to use certain magics. So basically, I guess I really should be talking about the skill system in this game. And this is one of the main differences with the Souls series, where Well, actually, I haven't even talked about the salt, really. I guess before that, we should talk about the salt. These are effectively your souls in this game, and you get them from killing enemies, killing bosses. You'll get items that will give you salt throughout the game, and if you die, like with the Souls games, you'll lose your souls. But you can go back to the spot you died, and an enemy will have those souls or salt. I gotta keep remembering that it's salt in this game, so you can kill the enemy and you can get your salt back. But if you die, your salt will be lost forever. And you can use your salt to do different things with NPCs in your sanctuaries, with like NPCs. I'll talk about that a bit later. But you can also level up. You'll find like your sanctuaries, which are kind of like your bonfires in the Souls games, and you can level up through what's called a skill tree. And this is very Final Fantasy X, where you have a sphere grid basically, and each starting character has their own starting location on the sphere grid. For instance, I chose a magic-based character, a sorcerer-based character, so I started on the magic part of the grid, where most of the abilities there were going to level up your magic. And you also had some parts of the sphere grid that level up your willpower, and then endurance, which will increase your equipment load to kind of allow you to equip heavy armor. The willpower increases your maximum stamina, so you obviously got to watch out for that too. There is no way to actually increase your maximum health. From what I understand, the game actually doesn't tell you this, the more you level up, the more your maximum health is increased. So you've got this massive grid of all of these different skills, and each level up gives you a new skill tree upgrade. So you can kind of branch out with this sphere grid. And for the sorcerer, one of the first skills might be level 1 class magic. And then if you kind of move throughout the grid, you'll eventually unlock level 2 class magic. And level 2 class magic might require 3 upgrade spheres. I forget what the item's called, but you get these spheres every level up. And you need 3 to get class 3 magic. But it's balanced in a way because it unlocks level 3 magic for you, but also gives you 3 points of magic. So it's balanced in that way, and the sphere grid is massive. You could branch out in different ways, and I did, and this is really rewarding. Where you can kind of create hybrid characters in this way. Where I branched off into magic at first, focusing on staffs and wands and getting my magic ability up. But then I more focused on the melee side of things, so I was able to get class 4 swords. And this is like to the right of the right part of the sphere grid. And so I was branching off in 2 different directions, and I feel like I was screwing up my character at first, but it turns out I was actually doing things, I don't want to say correctly, but I felt like I was doing things right for the character I wanted to make, which was like a spell sword type character. So like I said before, I had a sword that scaled with magic, and this was a sword that you needed the level 4 sword skill to get. So when I finally found this weapon through the transmute process, and the fact that I was already kind of working towards the level 4 sword and then the level 2 magic I think I needed for this sword, it was very rewarding. I was rewarded for kind of experimenting on this sphere grid and kind of going with a hybrid character. The game allows for a bunch of different character builds, and it's all through this skill tree system. And it's something at first I was a bit iffy on, but as I played the game more, as I got into New Game Plus, I started to appreciate it more, and I think it's actually a great system. It's a great new wrinkle into the Souls formula, and it works perfectly for what they were trying to go for here with this 2D metroidvania Souls type game. And it just adds a lot of depth. So the skill tree system, something I really enjoy. I thought it was great. And just the sheer variety here with build variety. One of the things I've loved about the Souls games is how replayable they are with all the different build varieties. And this game gets that down. It gets that down perfectly. So yeah, I was really impressed with that. Your characters, you'll find all this different armor and weapons that you'll find throughout the environments. There's tons of weapons, tons of armor, and your character is going to be. Most people are going to play this game quite differently on their first playthrough from a lot of people, and it makes me want to replay the game. Like with the Souls games, I can see myself coming back to this game because of this skill grid system and the build variety. So Yeah, let's talk about this Creed and Sanctuary system that I keep referring to, and this is another big change compared to Dark Souls, where Dark Souls had this covenant system where you would find different covenants that you could join, and they would give you certain benefits. The Souls games were never really great at telling you what these covenants did. And in that sense, this game's kind of the same in that sense, where a lot of these creeds that you'll find, these are effectively your covenants, and you'll find sanctuaries throughout the game, and these are your bonfires where you'll find them, and you'll kind of like pray to them. Like each creed is like praying to a certain god, and once you find one in the beginning of the game, you kind of have like a starting creed, and the first sanctuary you find, you use an item that correlates with your creed to kind of pray to that god in that sanctuary. So that sanctuary is permanently tied to that creed. Later in the game, there's ways to change sanctuaries to certain creeds. I'm not going to go into that too much. That's pretty fun to discover on your own. But each creed has their own benefits and their own kind of leader NPCs where you'll now this I actually took a while for me to understand, but once I did, it was actually really cool. Where you'll find all these statues throughout the environments, and once you go to this sanctuary with your creed, you kind of sit down at this bonfire, and you can kind of make an offering. And when you make an offering, you basically offer a statue to this sanctuary. So let's talk about the different statues that you'll find. The leader statue is the one I want to talk about first, where you'll summon a leader NPC of the creed you've chosen to that sanctuary. And when you talk to that NPC, you'll be able to work and do these quests, basically, where you'll get to materials from different enemies you'll find, and you'll kind of convert them to an item. A health regeneration item, a magic regeneration item. There's a few different other items. And the health regeneration item is basically your Estus flask from the Souls games that regenerate every time you return to a sanctuary or die. And that I love how they brought back the Estus Flask system, but at the same time, you're rewarded with more of them if you stay with your creed and you work towards the goals that your creed has with this leader NPC. So you'll start out with 5 Estus Flasks. We'll just call them Estus Flasks for now because each creed has their own Estus Flask, basically, that recovers health very quickly over time. They work very similarly, but if you kind of do quests for your leader of your creed, you can basically increase the amount of flasks you have, so you can get up to like 10 actually, if you stick with your creed. And you're actually discouraged to change creeds. You'll actually be considered an apostate by the creed that you were originally in if you change creeds all of a sudden. And this is something that the game is actually not great at explaining to you, and some people might find this to be a complaint. But for me, once I finally figured out what the statues did and how the creeds worked, I thought it was really, really cool. And the way this creed system kind of ties in with the Estus flasks and the sanctuaries that you find, the bonfires, these sanctuaries are kind of your checkpoints, basically. It's really cool, right? So you have these statues. That's just the leader statue. You'll also have a guide statue. Now, you can only have 3 statues at each sanctuary. You can't have any more than 3 statues. And the guide statue is one that you'll really want to put in the sanctuaries you find, where the guide allows you to fast travel. He's an NPC that you talk to in the sanctuary, and he allows you to fast travel to any other sanctuary you've been to. And you can buy item horn off of him that allows you to basically use it at any time to travel to a guide at any sanctuary. So the fast travel system is really unique, where you actually want to kind of spread out the guides that you put different to all these different sanctuaries, and you kind of want to map out the environment in your head so you can easily fast travel from one place to another and get to previous areas more easily. And I felt like there was actually probably a guide statue for each sanctuary you find in the game, and a sanctuary corresponds to each location in the game, and you'll get different benefits as well, where if you use a guide statue in that area will give you a bonus, not really event, but a bonus stat or something like that. I forget what all the different things are, but if you do like a blacksmith statue, your attack power will increase for that region. So there's some more benefits there as well. And blacksmith, obviously, if you want a blacksmith to come to that sanctuary, use a blacksmith statue, and you can upgrade your weapons and your armor. And the weapon upgrade system is pretty similar to Dark Souls. You got to find upgrade materials throughout the environments, and you find the blacksmith to upgrade your weapons and armor. There's an alchemist statue where you can summon an alchemist NPC to that sanctuary, and that's where you can transmute items, where you can basically transform items into stronger items. Like one of my swords was kind of like this weak class 1 sword, and with the transmute option with the alchemist NPC, I was able to transmute it into this sword that scaled with magic. So that was awesome and really rewarding. And these usually require boss items that you'll get from bosses. And so this is pretty similar to Souls. Souls has like upgrade mechanics similar to this, but I love how it all ties in with your creed and your sanctuary. If you're really, if your reputation is really good with your creed, and you summon a magic NPC, an NPC that sells magic, you're going to get stronger spells from that NPC. There's 2 hidden creeds that I found that gave me the Dragonfire. Well, one of them gave me the Dragonfire spell. When I worked for that leader and it did a bunch of side quests, I was able to get new spells that way. So it's really rewarding and really exciting. It was always exciting to see what benefits these creeds would give you. And finding a new sanctuary was always great, and I love just kind of creating your sanctuary in a way by bringing NPCs to them. So kind of creating designated sanctuaries, like one that maybe had to focus on magic, but the other sanctuary you created had more focus on melee and upgrading. There's all sorts of different NPCs you can send to these sanctuaries, and this is my favorite part of the game. I thought this was a brilliant twist on the Covenant system from Dark Souls, and it was just really satisfying and fun. I absolutely loved it. I thought it was this great twist on the formula. What else to talk about with the gameplay here? As you can tell, I'm really high on this game. I think this game is fucking phenomenal. The one thing, if we have to get negative here, I've been very positive on this. There's one thing that I am iffy on. I don't hate it, but it's a little weird, and I feel like it's one of those things where they wanted to take something from Dark Souls, but I don't think they needed to go this far. Where in some of the Souls games, some of them don't have this, but a few of them do. Dark Souls 2, Demon Souls, yeah, those two. Where your health would decrease every time you died. Your maximum health would decrease up to like a maximum of 50%. And this is something I never liked in Demon Souls or Dark Souls 2. And what they do with this game is they make this wounding effect. And I didn't know about this for a while, actually, that this is what was causing this to happen, where if you get hit by an enemy a certain amount of times, your maximum health is going to decrease. And it's going to stay decreased until you die or go back to a sanctuary. So effectively, the more you get damaged, the less health you have. And I find this is to be honestly too punishing. I did not like this mechanic to the point where I had to equip a ring that reduced wounding. That ring I got very early in the game, and I kept it on for the entire game, because if you don't have this on, you'll find yourself at like half health or even less than half health during these boss battles, which I actually haven't even talked about the boss battles, and it's kind of annoying. I didn't like it too much. Another system with the magic is your stamina. Like, magic costs focus, and if you use too much focus, your stamina gets decreased. So it's basically a way to prevent players from like spamming magic, almost like they knew it was too powerful. That I don't mind. That I think is good. I think that's good, and that's a good balanced way of making sure that magic isn't too OP, even though it pretty much is OP right now. But I don't mind that so much. You have ammo for the pistols and the bows, which I'm not crazy about either, but maybe it would be too OP. I haven't actually tried that kind of character. Very interested to see what that's like. Bosses are all great. I think There might be a little too many of them, but it's still really cool how there's a bunch of optional bosses and optional areas. It took me probably a little over 30 hours to get through this game. I explored almost every nook and cranny because I was just loving this game and I wanted to see everything that this game had to offer. But you could probably get through it in like half that if you miss a lot of the optional areas, which there's a lot of missable stuff in this game. And again, like I was saying before, that with that sense of exploration, this game has these optional areas and optional bosses that just most games would not have. So that's another area where I feel like this game really excels. But yeah, the boss fights are really fun. A few of them are quite memorable and challenging. I guess I should say this game is challenging too. It's challenging like the Souls games are, but it's almost never feels unfair. I don't want to say that the Souls series and this game are always fair. I think that's untrue. I think there are times where they can be a little unfair. But yeah, it's probably not as hard as the Souls games overall. It's, I think, a little less punishing than those games, but it still gets like this good amount of challenge, and it's still addictive. Every time I died, I wanted to keep coming back. The checkpoints are a bit more forgiving. In the Souls games, there's a lot of treks to bosses that take a while. This game, they usually put a sanctuary before the bosses quite often. There's a few with annoying trips, but generally it's not too bad. And it doesn't take too long for you to come back to life. The gold, I haven't even talked about the gold. Not only is there salt, there's gold that you can get from enemies, where you can buy things at certain shops. And every time you die, a mysterious cleric resurrects you for like a fraction of the gold that you have. Now, I don't know if the game needed this. Honestly, I found a lot of the stuff that you could buy with gold wasn't that useful. Obviously, some spells are useful to get with your gold, but I had so much gold at the end of the game because there was just nothing to buy with it. All the upgrade materials, you can only buy really weak upgrade materials for weapons. You can't buy any of the really good stuff. So, I don't know. I don't know if the game really needed gold. Or if it really needed to take gold away from you every time you died. But yeah, that's in the game. I'm trying to think what else. I mean, that about covers it with the gameplay. There's probably stuff I'm missing, but this review is already really long. But I can't help it. This game, there's a lot to talk about here, and I fucking love this game. It's amazing from a gameplay standpoint. There's really not much to complain about. But I guess let's talk about the art now. And this is kind of a controversial part of this game. Some people really do not like the art of this game. Now, the characters, I won't lie, I don't really like the character art in this game, at least as far as the NPCs and your main character goes. They have like this weird puppet look to them that's kind of off-putting. I don't know. I don't like the characters. It just doesn't fit with like the aesthetic that this game has. The really dark, oppressive aesthetic. But other than that, other than the character art, I actually think this game has really fantastic environments. Like they're really varied. It's this island, but there's all these really varied dark environments. It gets that dark, moody atmosphere that the Souls games have. It gets that down so perfectly. So there's some really nice looking environments in this game, and the enemy and boss designs are really good. There's some really creative like boss monsters in this game. So overall, I actually really like the art, and it's also very cohesive across the entire game too. The only thing I don't like about it is the characters, and you get used to them the more that you play the game. So it's probably going to be off-putting to a lot of people that first play the game, but you'll definitely grow. The art will grow on you over time, and overall, I still think the game actually looks really good and has a nice look to it. It is almost too dark at times. It can be hard to see your character sometimes, but that's not too big of a deal. Soundtrack. The soundtrack is like with the Souls games, very minimal. You have like this very kind of guitar-driven music that kind of comes in anytime you're near a sanctuary, which is really cool. So yeah, the music, it's hard to talk about it too much. There's not much of it, but what is there is fitting. It fits the game. It helps create that really oppressive atmosphere that the game has overall. So yeah, like with the Souls games, good music. It really fits the game, but it's not like music you'll be hearing constantly. And then you have like kind of more epic kind of boss themes that you'll hear sometimes as well. So overall, music's good. The sound effects are great, though. The sound effects in this game are awesome. Really high quality sound effects. No voice acting, but there's hardly any text in the game, anyways. And it's an indie game. So yeah, that's Salt and Sanctuary. That about covers it. Obviously, I'm going to put up some gameplay here, but this review is way longer than I thought for a game that is fairly short. Although, honestly, it took me 30 hours, which is pretty good for a game that's $17. And like I said, the replay value here is insane. There's so many different character builds. I'll be coming back to it many times in the future. I even got the platinum in this game. I got all the trophies. I loved the game that much. That's something I almost never do. But this game was so good that I wanted to do it. So I actually did 2 playthroughs. My first playthrough, like I said, took 30 hours. And my New Game Plus playthrough, which, like with Souls games, New Game Plus is not that great. The sphere grid, it makes it a little more interesting, where you can kind of, again, make your character more of a hybrid character on your second playthrough if you want to. But it's, I don't know, it's not as fun as just creating a new character. But the New Game Plus only took me, like, I want to say no more than 7 hours. Like, if you know where you're going in this game, it's really quick. And I think the speedrunning community for this game is going to be very interesting. You could probably speedrun this game really fast. Because, yeah, a lot of these areas and bosses are optional. Which is, again, I just love that. I absolutely love that. But, yeah, I gotta say, I'm really impressed with this game. It actually blew me away. I came away so surprised by it, especially considering the scope of it, how many areas there are, how much variety there is to it, and how well it just is able to fuse Metroidvania and Souls elements together. And it doesn't feel derivative or anything like that either. Like it definitely rips off Souls in a lot of ways, but I feel like the craftsmanship here is just too strong to get mad at it. And as a fan of the Souls series, it was just stellar, man. I really love this game. It's my game of the year so far. Now, I haven't played too many games that have come out this year. In fact, Fire Emblem and Digimon, I think, are the only games I've played this year. But I prefer this to those 2 games by quite a bit. So much so that, like, Dark Souls 3 is coming right around the corner, and I'm actually questioning if I'm going to like Dark Souls 3 better than this. I probably will, everything I've heard of that game, but yeah, Salt and Sanctuary, I actually like this game better than Bloodborne. Yeah, that's probably a crazy opinion to have, but again, like I said, it gave me that feeling the first time I had when I played Dark Souls, just with all its new systems that I was just kind of discovering more for myself, but yeah, gone on long enough. It's $17 on PlayStation Network for PS4. If you want to wait for Vita or PC, that's cool. It would be really fun on the Vita, I think. But man, go out and play this game. Support this game. I hope this game does well. I'm very curious to see what these guys do next. Very impressive for a 2-person team, and it makes me want to go back and play their previous games like The Dishwasher. But yeah, that's it, guys. I want to thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.